Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to you on the latest episode of Mint Think Tank, The Inner Circle, titled Outlook for Retail Industry in India in 2022, brought to you in association with Salesforce. Well, let me set the tone for today's discussion with an overview of India's retail space. Now, India is one of the largest consumer economies globally, and our retail industry accounts for more than 10% of the country's gross domestic product. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic came as a watershed moment as sales plummeted during the 2-month lockdown imposed in the country in early 2020. But what it brought for the retail industry was also a much needed reset, where retailers were forced to re-examine their legacy systems that had shaped this space for years. Retailers were quick to embrace the new age retail ecosystem marked by a definitive shift to e-commerce and now omni-channel retail. Today, more than 95% of India's PIN codes are serviced by e-retail, democratizing the shopping experience and the Indian digital ecosystem. Now, the pandemic has impacted India's retail ecosystem and consumer psyche alike, and some of the changes that it has brought about in customer behavior are irreversible. Today's new age customer seeks more than a good product at a great price. They seek seamless omni-channel shopping experiences where they can access the product that they want at the time that they desire it. Now, the new age retail ecosystem thrives heavily on customer insights, whether it is on personalization of services or presence through multiple channels. A uniform view of the customer is of utmost importance to CPG and retail organizations. Now, while technology has completely transformed the supply chain, manufacturing as well as retail, the question is whether it can become the true beacon of customer success. So today's discussion looks at this paradigm shift that we have witnessed in the retail industry and, of course, the outlook for 2022 and beyond. I'm your host, Gautam Srinivasan, and it is my pleasure to welcome our esteemed panel for today's discussion. Our speakers include Amit Dwivedi, Head Strategy and Business Development at Aditya Birla Fashion and Retail Limited; Rajneet Kohli, President and Chief Business Officer at Jubilant Foodworks; Juhi Singh, Head of Digital at Marico Limited; Kumar Saurabh, Head of Lifestyle Category at Udaan; Dinkar Ailavarappu, Head of Strategy at Flipkart; and Anuradha Tyagi, Retail and CPG Leader, Salesforce. Thank you everyone for joining us today. A wide-ranging conversation for a sector that's always grabbed the headlines in our mind space and, of course, our media. Kumar, so let's start with you. You have, I believe, nearly 2 decades of experience across India's retail space. So can you tell us about the changes that the retail ecosystem in India has witnessed over the last few years, especially in the aftermath of the pandemic? What's caught your attention?
Thanks for soliciting my views. I think I've spent a bulk of my time in Indian retail, especially branded retail, and what we thought was the only way forward, which is more malls, more high streets, bigger stores, more experiential stores, has been turned topsy-turvy. I think most of the retailers had to re-examine their expansion plans, where they located their stores, and how much technology they put in them. Right. So I think if I look back at the last 2 years, there has been a tremendous reconfiguration of how brands sell and how retailers buy. At the forefront of e-commerce and B2B at Udaan, we also see a large shift towards
I believe there's a bit of a connection issue. Kumar, if you could reiterate your point that you mentioned about Udaan's experience. We lost you a bit there. If you can just restate your point about Udaan's experience.
Sure. So what I'm sharing is that we saw at the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of retailers changed the model of sourcing. They were able to move a lot of their buying digitally because they couldn't travel. And right through the pandemic, we've seen ups and downs as market has opened up. Some people going back to market, some people remaining in the digital ecosystem. So we definitely see a lot of retailers having changed their methods of purchase. Also making sure that the customers who they price most, because right now in the offline business, the customer is extremely priced. A lot of customers have shifted to Dinkar's company, right? A lot of customers have shifted to B2C buying right now, and offline retail has become even more priced. So every single customer is today, I think, fated over by the retailer quite a bit, and the retailers are going out of the way to make sure that the right selection and the right price is coming to their customers. So one big shift that we see within the choices that have been made is also around the choice of brands. We have seen tremendous consolidation in the brands that are being bought by retailers and being adopted, especially brands that are in the comfort wear segment have zoomed, and some of the other segments have really taken a steep downfall. We also see that a large number of retailers in a business like footwear have really changed. So India has about 1.5 lakh footwear shops. That's the official estimate, maybe slightly higher. For that 1.5 lakh outlets, about 40% of those outlets today source digitally every month. And that's something that we didn't see before. We used to see maybe half of that number pre-COVID. And now most of these outlets are now sourcing online. So I can see massive amount of shift. And the rest of the folks who we don't see on our platforms are actually on WhatsApp. And that gives us even more confidence that when they're sourcing on WhatsApp, one day they will want a richer catalog, more data, more social proofing. And therefore they will come to platforms which are inherently richer on catalog like ours and our competitors to be able to buy. So the fact that they've started buying on WhatsApp is a massive tailwind for the e-commerce industry. So I do think that it will reconfigure quite a bit of the industry, especially the intermediaries as we see them.
All right. And as they used to say, location. But I guess in today's digitally enabled world, location is where your customer is. The storefront is where which platform your customer is in, whether it's WhatsApp or anything else. A great point of view to share from Kumar. And of course, sourcing, as he sees, is one of the most important trends. A shift to digital modes when it comes to sourcing by companies. That's being one of the noteworthy trends coming forward. All right, Amit, let me get you in. ABFRL, I believe, which currently operates around 3,400 stores across the country. It recently made an announcement to set up a dedicated company to enter the D2C business as a strategy to build a portfolio of new age digital brands. So can this be viewed as a reset of the future of retail in this country? We see everyone going into this, this let's give our customer a single window option and give them all the options that they want. So is this the big reset which is coming about for the retail sector in the country?
Thanks, Gautam. I'll not specifically talk about ABFRL, but I'll talk about how the space is emerging per se, which kind of became the reason for the company to formulate this strategy and announce it. I think whether it is retail, which was earlier in its earlier avatar was MBO, and was followed by e-com. I think it's all happening in line with how consumers are evolving. As a company which has for last 30 years done mostly offline retail and created brands in lifestyle space for offline customers, as we look forward, we saw that customers were increasingly moving to the online space, looking for some specific things which are not necessarily a brand-led research, but was more to do with how they would look at a particular product, look at a kind of solution that they want for any of the problems. And that's how the consumption was finally getting created. So using that as a premise, which I think is pretty much in line with how consumers have evolved in the past, taking that as a base, we see customers are increasingly going to be on the online space and look for certain products. And that's the reason we believe that there is a huge opportunity to build brands there. Using that as a base, whether it is ABFRL or other large companies who are looking at D2C as a new growth lever, are basically trying to chase those customers who are going to be on the online space. And these customers will not necessarily look for brands, but they look for brands which are more relevant for them in the online space. So that's basically the premise on which this whole movement has happened. I won't say it's a reset of the business model, but it's just an extension of the same principle with which the consumers have evolved and how the brand builders as well as sellers have tried to chase them. When the customers move from MBOs to retail, obviously the sellers started building a viable retail model and started expanding. The same 3,400 stores that you mentioned have been built over the last 25, 30 years. As customers started looking for brands in the e-com space, obviously a new channel got created, which was e-commerce. Now, as customers are looking for brands and they became more nuanced, so looking for brands in the digital space, a new opportunity opens up for sellers to build brands which are only online, and hence this whole D2C game. So that's how we would want to look at how this space is emerging and will evolve going forward.
All right. Thank you, Amit. And that's separating the hype from the reality. And at the end of the day, it's always about the brands trying to make fans out of their customers, right? And that's where the loyalty, the effort that you put into making sure that the loyalty and the engagement remains. And of course, here is where technology can play an important role for enterprises to really know more about their customers. Well, from fashion, let's go to food and see what's the experience there. Raj, Domino's is one of the largest QSRs or quick service restaurants in the country with over 1450 outlets spread across 310 cities. Quite an expansive reach. You're also entering into food tech space to scale up your footprint to, I believe, 3,000 stores. So tell us more about this shift towards digital that you're going through.
Well, thank you, Gautam. And it is indeed a pleasure to be part of this esteemed panel. While we are a largest food company in the India, but let me tell you with a lot of pride that we're actually the largest outside US. It's a US company. Among 96 countries, India is the largest market for Domino's outside US, with 1,500 plus stores that we have today. While it's a pizza making company, at the heart of it, I've always envisaged it to be a food tech powerhouse. And therefore, we always looked at digital first kind of approach whenever we look at, observe data, and digital channels. Today, the vitamin D, as I always say, for retail is about digital and data, the two vitamin D in my sense. And when I talk to the teams, it's always a lot about data. A lot of team members always say that I tell them that don't speak English to me, speak maths, speak in data terms, because we get really carried away in terms of our emotions at times. And generally, as W. Edward had said, in God we trust, all others must bring data. That's how we work as well at Jubilant as well. And I think we have a massive data lake where we look at all customer interactions and how we continue to enrich this data. So three things actually is from our business point of view, that how we look at data and technology and why this digital drive has been that we look at data from customer analytics point of view. We have deep consumer understanding. The number two being product level, so that we can give a great consumer experience. And third being, of course, marketing. And nothing new. I mean, all people here on the panel, I'd say that this is very obvious, right? So what's so different for Domino's food perspective? Let me just give an example. This includes, we look at every data of how consumers respond to us, how they look at our app. I'm not saying if they buy from our app, what are they looking at? What are they spending time at? Instance, for example, when we know that people get a pizza to their card, their favorite, for example, a pepper paneer pizza for you might get into a card. It takes 2 minutes and 34 seconds to actually make the payment. So what we do is what we call shoulder surfing. We trigger the restaurant saying that, let's start making the pizza. Because we know that 94% of our customers actually go through the entire payment cycle. So we actually trigger to the customer. That's why we're using digital and data to, make faster delivery. It's not that we make our riders go faster. And 30 minutes to my own mind, I know we promised long time back, delivery is there, but it's passing. And today we're looking at a 20 minutes delivery.
We are in a 10-minute world now.
We also make freshly food prepared as per your order. It's not there. So that's
fair point.
So
fair point. But sure, go ahead with that insight.
Yeah, and I think my personal sense on this one is, if any company, whoever is is there, always keeps the customer in the center. And while I'm not a soothsayer, you started by saying how FY22 will be, and I don't have a crystal ball to say that what the future will be like. But I'm very sure that companies and leaders who will be able to marry the customer expectations with digital will not only thrive, but also drive the future here. So eager to learn from all this team panel here, but looking forward to a strong year this year.
Well, those are some delicious insights coming from Raj, and I'll be sure to order a Domino's pizza after this conversation is done. But good to know that, how somewhere a predictive analytics works to make sure that you're saving time and you're being more efficient and more responsive to customers. Well, from fashion to food to e-tail, and of course, one of the rock stars in that e-tail space is Flipkart. So I'll bring in Dinkar for his perspective. Dinkar, the switch to online retail has has empowered the consumer like never before, making parameters like range of products and pricing transparent. But the customer is also seeking a higher degree of personalization. So I want to ask from you, how can retailers create customer loyalty by evolving their go-to-market model and provide value at the moments that matter? Because this is the era of CX, where everyone is trying to differentiate themselves in terms of their CX with their customer, the engagement with the customer. So what are some key things to watch out for there?
Yeah, no, thanks. The great question, and thanks for asking that. It's interesting you bring the range of assortment. Let me actually start from there on this topic of personalization. Fundamentally, e-commerce has an infinite aisle, but it's not really infinite. As in, if you search for a product, how many pages will you go through? You'll go to what, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages. That's essentially, we need to surface 50 products, for better or for worse, maybe 60, 70. Now, and which is where I think personalization kind of kicks in quite substantially. There is no e-commerce without personalization. We need to surface the right set of 50, 60, 70 products which you want to look at. Now, the way we think, and we've invested enormously as Flipkart on personalization, on AI, which is critical to power this personalization. The way we think of it is, I think, 3 layers of personalization. At a very basic level would be the affluence-based personalization. Users leave tremendous amounts of click streams, and as in signals they generate while on our platform are very useful. The clicks, the searches, the transactions, the payment mechanism, you name it, which actually allows us to surface the type of product which you might be interested in looking at. So that's one level of personalization. Complicating matters further, you'd have the geographic based personalization. So for example, if somebody is searching for a silk sari, it means different things. In, let's say, I'm just picking a random place, Lucknow or Kanpur or somewhere else, and it means something entirely different in Pollachi or Coimbatore or somewhere else in South India. So it's about actually, and it's true not just for saris, milk or dahi might actually mean different things in Haryana than it means in Andhra, than it means in Tamil Nadu, brands or whatever is actually consumed. So that's a second level, as in tastes and preferences change enormously as you move from A geography to B geography, and we know India's bewildering diversity. There's actually a third layer on top of that, which is like fundamentally context-led. So you might be a fluent customer who's looking for iPhones 70% of your time or whatever, generally looking for iPhones and such, but you might also want a 200 rupee Hawaii chappal. As in my affluence and geography might actually throw something else up on together. So we need to actually think through what's the journey and the context of your shopping in that particular moment to actually give you the Hawaii chappal as opposed to a 5,000 rupee Crocs clogs or whatever you may be. And so that's and there's an engine. Nothing is manual. Nobody's applying his mind and solving it. There's an engine, and this engine is self-learning. If newer things pop up, and they pop up all the time, it actually fixes itself. So yeah, that's how we would think about personalization.
Absolutely. As they say, data is the new oil. And as Raj said, he speaks the language of maths. And in God we trust. For everything else, there's data. And data can help you unlock possibilities you might have not seen before. And of course, make your retail experience much, much more relevant to your consumer, as Dinkar has outlined what Flipkart does in terms of personalizing really well for its customers. Let me bring in Anuradha for the enablers perspective. Now, so many possibilities that we have discussed, and just at the outset of this conversation, Anuradha, the share of e-commerce in retail, that's expected to grow from 6% in FY21 to 11% in FY26. Now, as we've heard, it's democratized shopping with access to, I believe, more than 95% pin codes across the country. So I want to hear from you, what according to you are the big pillars of future-ready retail with tech?
Thanks for that, Gautam, and lovely to be with the rest of the panel here. I think when we look at acceleration of India's digital commerce evolution or transition, it's rooted in one big imperative, and that's omni-channel presence and excellence. And I think even if we talk about what the future of retail tech might look like, it's crucial to understand what are some of those big themes or levers that are actually shaping some of these tech investments. I think the first one that really comes to my mind is hybrid behavior. And most of the consumers, like we already touched upon, are in a position that they're now deciding where they want to shop, when they want to shop, how do they want to shop. And it's a true convergence that we've seen of both physical and digital domains, which we call as phygital experiences and behavior. Imperative for retailers to then start thinking what their data strategy is going to look like, have one view of both their B2B as well as their B2C ecosystems, really be empowered with the right sort of customer data platform that can create that seamless experience across all touch points and channels, which are of course straddling from both physical to digital domains, so both online and offline. The second big lever that's really shaping tech in a big way is actually instant gratification and convenience. So for most consumers, as we know, whether they're shopping on e-commerce marketplaces like Flipkart and others, or it's in store, their last best experience has actually become benchmark. So what that means in the context of tech really is that retailers are now having to push the pedal on capabilities that really ensure more transparent, faster, timely deliveries, managing the inventories, warehouses, product services in a much more agile way. And that's all happening on the back of AI, ML-led forecasting of demand, or for that matter, IoT that's actually helping real-time forecasting, much to the tune of what Raj mentioned in the context of, how data is actually enabling decision-making. The third one is an interesting one, which many of us might agree with, which is the coming together of retail experiences with actually how you engage customers or how you entertain them. So there is a lot of focus now on immersive, interactive experiences, because consumers have had this very strange opportunity of shopping from the confines of their home. And now, of course, while the world is opening up, there is far more focus on how do we keep consumers across different cohorts and archetypes entertained, which means whether it's in the form of gamification or it is virtual consultation, 3D modeling, hyper-personalization, a lot of that is really happening on the back of AR, VR, etc. And the last one that I would really want to come to is actually value consciousness. And what that means in the context of tech really is, while there has been rise in raw material prices, we see those pressures for some of the FMCG companies. It's also starting to kind of impact end consumer decisions. But the focus on, and there are of course margin pressures, but the focus for a consumer continues to be on both quality and value. And what that means is, how can you ensure that your tech is positioned well enough to cut down on the operating costs? And that really brings me to the future of retail tech, which is rooted in AI, ML, AR, VR, process automation, and deep predictive analytics to ensure that you're looking at an agile, sustainable supply chain. You're looking at immersive, seamless customer experience. And more importantly, you are addressing the overarching convenience that consumers are looking at in the phygital context.
All right. When we talk about the vision of the modern store, I wonder how our local Kirana stores are going to be transformed, and what kind of new experiences that they are going to bring about. As a microcosm, I've never met my local Kirana owner, because it was always a digital or at least an interaction over the phone, and the deliveries get sent within say 15-20 minutes, no problems at all, and they can predict what your order is going to be. So in a sense, you don't even have to create the list. So that's just a microcosm of what's possible if the thinking itself is different. And of course, there's lots of possibilities coming about which data can offer, but of course you have to make sense of that data. And in that context, I'll bring in Juhi. Juhi, in today's consumer-centric world, it is imperative to understand the needs of the customer and of course track consumption trends, especially in retail, where consumer patterns and behavior are ever changing. Now, you have led the digital transformation initiatives in Marico, which is a household name in the country. So I want to know from you, from your expertise, how do you use technology to spot new trends and gather insights that can help create strategies for growth?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Gautam, and really happy to be on this panel, hearing all these varied perspectives. Quickly talking about what we did, and really actually COVID has changed us all. And if you see the last 2 years, the way we have launched products also has changed a lot. That has happened at the back of an algorithm which my team has developed in-house, and I'm proud to talk about it. What we really did is that first we understood that how these digital insurgent brands, if you may call so, are launching products. And really, if you see, there is no hero product. There is typically a A/B testing happening. There is a launch which is happening with a range of product, and that lets decide that, which of the product consumer is preferring. So we realize that the way they are working is that there are some innovators who are talking about some DIY or influencers, and there is an ingredient which is being spoken about for hair fall, for skin, or whatever, and then consumers start talking about it. So there are a lot of mentions which are coming up. And after that, these insurgent brands launch certain, series of products on Amazon, Flipkart, etc., and which is how the bestsellers are moving up. So if we were to know the surge in Google searches, YouTube searches, and essentially Amazon and Flipkart bestsellers, these are the three places. And apart from that, social conversation. 4 of them in surge in volume, growth rate, and competition intensity is actually leading to how the trends are formed. So based on these 4 sources of data and the 16 metrics together, we developed an algorithm which pulls now data on a real-time basis. And even before a trend is formed, like a matured trend or is declining, we are able to predict it with a good amount of accuracy. After that, it's about, marketing team's job to essentially create an aura around it, some packaging innovation or a story around it, etc. But essentially what it did is it actually fast-tracked our innovation pipeline from waiting for 3 months, 6 months of consumer research and testing and all of that to a live dashboard wherein you can see almost, trends moving up and down. And taking that bet on it and creating a large range of product and then A/B testing. So that's how we really did on trend spotting. Second part on competition intensity. Given the scenario, it's no more like, hair oil has to compete with hair oil. It's a large beauty space, and there are digital insurgent brands launching onion oil and whatnot. So they are also our competition, while the price point may be different, but essentially our consumer is going there and their consumer is coming to us. Now, in order to do so, what we did is that we developed a framework called Digital Quotient for Marico, which essentially looks at about 100 data points on digital across e-commerce, paid media, social media, and brand.com and DTC and influencers. What it really does is that we put weightage to the matrix that matter the most to the business and lesser weightage to matrix that are important but not so, driving the business matrix. And we put all the brands, which are about 170 in number, including 20 of Marico brands. And these are mix of across the categories that we play into, which is beauty, hair oil, male grooming, food, etc. And across the board, we get the scores and we do a sum product to arrive at digital quotient out of 100. Now, when we rank our brands, it's a razor sharp answer to say that this is where you're stacking up. And these are the areas where you need to improve upon, or this is where you are doing really well, so continue to do so. And over a period of 1.5 to 2 years, from a baseline of Marico averaging to 41 on DQ, we have now ended this year at around 67. So it's a great journey from there. And most of our brands are now like clear what they need to focus on instead of like, going all over the place. It has also given us a competition advantage because we know what the competition is doing on a real-time basis through these dashboards and matrix. And hence we are also prepped up, or sometimes we are early as well. So yeah, I think that's how we are using technology and data to...
That's the magic behind the scenes, right? As they say, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And for customers, when they see, hey, I think the brand really knows me well, knows what products are working and what products are like, what's the buzz? That's a very clear outline that you have given, Juhi, in terms of discovering the next big thing and how data works to your benefit. And of course, you can also talk about, Juhi, about how this insight into, the brand Q index translates into the change for the business. Any insights on that?
Yeah, so what we've also done is that we have run a correlation this year to the matrix that we measure and as an outcome of the digital quotient and e-commerce sale. So what we have done is we have run a multi-touch attribution model, and we have realized that there are few matrix that are more important to drive e-commerce sales. And these matrix are now, let's say, part of every brand's goal sheet and focus area. There are live dashboards to see how they are moving. So these could be like ACOS, blended ACOS, or CAC, or let's say net sentiment or reviews. So what has really happened is a lot of our brands, let's say, which were not so digital savvy, especially, because the competition stage is like that, have suddenly started competing with a Lakme or a Mamaearth. And given the intensity of content, aggressiveness on e-commerce, I'm also proud to say that amongst the largest FMCGs, our penetration on e-commerce is the largest right now. It's actually between 8 to 9% right now, which is higher than FMCG average, by the way. We are also one of the brands which are featuring high on DQ. So amongst the all brands that we measure, Parachute is amongst top 10. Beardo is, of course, at number 4. We also have Saffola Oats at number 3. So a lot of our brands have really put in efforts, and it's also showing in the growth rates that we are seeing in overall sale as well as e-commerce.
All right, let me dial back to some points which Amit had mentioned, and as we are extending this conversation around what's next. Amit, as we recover from the pandemic, the footfalls to brick and mortar stores, they've started to come back, and organizations which say had adopted to e-commerce models, they've had to reinvent themselves to the omni-channel retail paradigm. So in this switch, I want to hear from you, how do you ensure that your customer gets the same experience interacting with the brand in store and online? We've heard about, how data works in its magic in helping brands understand what the consumer wants. But when the channels expand and it's a sort of a hybrid version where it's digital and it's physical, it's phygital in a sense, how do brands move forward then?
Yeah, so on that, Gautam, I think if you look at it from the perspective of offline players who built online, the first move in this space has been more around building access, right? It's more about putting on top of what you're already doing in your large offline operations. When COVID happened, obviously that large engine for you was not working. So a new engine, a new channel was created, or in some cases even strengthened to ensure that the customers keep getting your product. But as we move forward, as you're saying, as the footfalls are coming back and the kind of expectations now consumers have after having bought online for a really long time, their expectation from the brand remains the same, that the brand should be connected with them. They should be able to experience the same quality product, the same kind of service that they experience in the offline space, and similarly in the online space as well. What it also has helped the brands do is that now, because the consumers have come online and shopped, and for offline players that's a big thing, because most of that shopping for online businesses has always happened online. So for offline guys to get this incremental data, insights on how consumers look at products, how consumers buy during different phases of the year, all that has just helped them enhance their services to the customers. So whether it is about enhancing or enriching the assortment, whether it is coming up with products which are more conducive for a certain channel, which is online in this case, whether it is their own D2C or third-party channels, or it's also about engaging with them through content, through mailers, through communication, etc. That experience which got created during this time is now the base case for customers as well as the brands to build upon. As we move forward, the offline part will also start giving them that bit of immersive experience, which will be more integrated than what it used to be earlier, which was purely offline. So earlier it was more about that particular transaction at that point in time, but now it's more over a longer customer lifetime and hence the value associated with it. So these engagements, which in the offline space from a brand builder's perspective where long-term are only going to get more enriched, because the channel which is available for them to experience brands is one more channel which is kind of a huge and growing channel. So both e-com and online and offline put together will give them that space, both from a customer side to experience the product and from the brand side to basically ensure that they're always engaged with the customer throughout this journey, whether they are buying from the brand at that point in time or not, but the engagement is more longer term in nature. So that's the new base for offline players going forward.
All right, Raj, your response, the redefinition of that connected experience between brands and customers. The retail industry has achieved, I believe, 93% of pre-COVID sales levels in Feb 2021, with QSRs, I think, recording an increase of 18%. So I want to know from you, how are you leveraging technology to create that or redefine connected experience with your customers, vendors, and service partners?
Now, thanks, Gautam, and great insights from Amit as well. The entire digital ecosystems like online shopping, and thanks to friends like Dinkar here with Flipkart, whether it's mobile banking, ride sharing, all the have raised consumer expectations that are in speed of convenience. That's something now consumer expects. And therefore, for us at Domino's, we no longer can expect that the benchmark is going to be our food service player. It has to be Amazon, has to be Flipkart. And customers therefore are demanding. And the problem is that we are online, we are offline as well. And the kiss of death really comes when companies are not able to create that seamless experience between online and offline. I'll give you a couple of examples, and probably that helps you illustrate. We've always been an omni-channel. It's not that we were not online earlier, and we've always prided in ourselves with delivery. But before even COVID happened, we went with zero contact delivery. And this is what happens. A lot of the stores were all not able to operate during COVID time. But since we had our own strong app, we were able to use our technology to pivot our business to deliver essentials. Essentials were allowed to deliver, and I had a huge workforce of 30,000 people who knew how to deliver well. So we tied up with ITC, Amul, Tata, and we started delivering atta, dal, chawal, milk, and in just 2 days' time, we were able to use our app to tie that up. Have you had in a Domino's app, Domino's Essentials, and we started delivering that. It did two things. Of course, one is my entire team genuinely, got really, lifted in saying, they're and I coined them called food soldiers, that you'll go and deliver food. So it doesn't matter whether you were delivering pizza earlier, now you're going and delivering this. And since the muscle is already built in 30 minutes, we were able to do that. That's also one great example where we could use technology to go out and actually deliver essentials as well. The other one, we've used technology in the past, and how we used it during COVID is that 2019, we've used technology to deliver Domino's pizzas on train. I don't know whether you guys all know that or not, but if you guys can enter,
we've seen the videos.
Yeah, you just put your PNR number and just tell me the station and your pizza you want. The technology in the back end that we've tied up with railways will enable us to come and deliver to your seat there. Since that we were able to deliver, launch drive and pick, where customers it doesn't need to come into our store, because people really fear when over time, can they come into the store or not. So using that to build that, you can actually come out and deliver to your, roadside where you parked in your car. If I could deliver on train, I told the team we can definitely deliver on the roadside, which is there. So that's 1, 2, or 3 ways of where we use technology. One is in terms of service, but my sense is now is the time that we need to really, lift our standards and look at consumer experience. Our 30 minutes guarantee is there, but why does customer even need to ask for 30 minutes if we're late? We have a digital way. We know that if you're late. So what we're looking at is now auto cashback, 30 minutes and 1 minute, 31st minute, we'll put the money back into your wallet. That's something that will be coming out very soon. And entire frictionless orders. We know customers like to order the same pizza. 62% of our customers order the same order every time. So we have a frictionless, order system in our app where you just long press and within 10 seconds, the same order gets placed. So these are ways that we're using technology, to build a business. Let me be very honest. 4 years back, I only had one CIO. Today, I have a CIO, CTO, CPO, and an entire analytics and digital team. So really investing behind this before we start loosely using this word, really helps our business. In our case, from 54%, today, 98.4% of our delivery orders are all digital. So that's the journey that we've been. And I think it's much more to learn and more to go forward as well in this one.
Absolutely. And well, you can't escape a traffic jam, but at least you can enjoy it in the company of a pizza, hot pizza delivered to you through the magic of data. And in some of my earlier discussions, the roles themselves are changing. Today, so many digital transformation functions have entered the CFO's office that it's no longer just a finance function. It's an overall technology enabled function. So let's see where we go from here. But taking a point which Raj mentioned, and I'll bring in Dinkar, considering, Flipkart, it's redefined audience expectations acquisitions, it's redefined the benchmark itself. So I want to know, where do we go from here? Dinkar, according to a recent report by Bain and Company, the e-retail market is expected to grow by about $120 to $140 billion by FY26. That's an increase of about 25 to 30% per annum over the next 5 years. So how is online retail setting higher benchmarks for convenience and CX? Tell us about the Flipkart experience and then the broader industry experience.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and thanks again for asking that. So this growth is actually, I'm simplifying a little bit, it's going to come from two sources. There'll be a bunch of new guys who will be coming online, shopping online. The gap between those who shop and those who are, let's say, on WhatsApp is quite substantial, it's massive actually. And for them, and some of these things are actually happening right now. So we have a very strong vernacular capability. We have a very strong voice capability, and they'll only get stronger going forward, which will actually enable more people to browse, search, and actually buy online. So that's one dimension. It's also a lot to do with more traditional retail metrics like selection and the width and the depth, and that also keeps going up all the time. The second part is actually it creates new frequency, as in people who are already buying are actually buying a lot more online. So, and there I think there's the service means fundamentally different things around. It's more to do with time, and we know 10, 20, 30, it's going to, I don't know, essentially everybody will have a dark store in their house at some point, but yeah, the speed, I think the speed expectations are going up, and we're going to cater to that. And that's again, reasonably 101 and has been happening in the past as well. The other part of service is actually just it's the search and browse and the recommendation, actually, so that you're better able to find what you are truly looking for. I'll give an example. A good percentage of searches for a jeans company are spelled on our app as LEWIS. Now, but as in we need to actually know that he means a pair of jeans, and that's what he needs to actually be shown. So as in that's the search and the recommendation, and how do you actually get to that? Those two things would actually continue to grow substantially more. There are a couple of other points which I thought not narrowly around service, which I should touch upon. And I think Amit earlier in the call talked about that briefly as well, is this whole D2C revolution. I think that wouldn't have happened, and that's only going to continue to get very strong through this year without e-commerce. As in the greatest barrier to any new business, any new brand is actually customer acquisition, and e-commerce has actually fundamentally made it easier. It's not still very, very easy, still very expensive, but some things like that won't have happened. And I think those revolutions will continue to play out, and not in 22, 23 and beyond. A variant of that, the creator commerce environment. So as in that again never existed, creator commerce. So as in, I don't know, I'm sure you've seen people with designation social media influencer, whatever that's supposed to mean. That's a thriving economy, and that's only going to get bigger. That again wouldn't have happened without actually e-commerce, the ability to connect the influence to actually a transaction. So there's going to be new stuff coming quite substantially, and will continue to grow for many years to come, not just this year.
All right, let's expand on that. Juhi, about 40% of online shoppers made at least one purchase through social media channels like Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp in 2020. So taking forward what Dinkar mentioned, what kind of a role are content creators and influencers going to play in the future of e-retail in India? Just from that customer acquisition, customer discovery process.
Yeah, so I think very important, but I would just take a step back. What is essentially an influencer doing, right? And Dinkar rightly mentioned that, right now, because of the digitization, there is an influencer that exists. Few years back, let's say 10 years back, it was essentially a celebrity. Around him, there was a whole lot of aura that, I need to follow his style, I need to follow this and all of that. And whatever they said, we bought. Ranveer Singh said, buy Setwet, we will buy, right? So essentially, that's what happened. And suddenly there are these style icons which have started to rise through content and video platforms. So they created these YouTube channels, and they're talking about how to do your DIY style, this, that, then surge of Instagram, in between TikTok, and so on and so forth. Now, what has happened is that they have created their own niche follower base, which is, of course, not as large as celebrity base, but a lot of them are actually giving competition to some of celebrities as well. When they say that, this brand is good or this brand is not good, it's actually a make or break situation. I will give you two examples of how we had seen a positive as well as a negative impact of it. And these are not even very large influencers I'm talking about. I mean, we also classify them typically how you have celebrity, macro, micro, nano, and all of that. We have a D2C website called Safula Store. And in order to attract more consumers, we started doing this free gift thing. And since, of course, we were in a very initial stage of our D2C journey, there is a split shipment that's happening. And one of the small YouTubers figured that out. So he created this video saying that you order on COD and you can receive the gift and just RTO the rest. And suddenly there is a surge in RTO numbers in our dashboards. Of course, it took some time to figure out because RTO after third attempt is when we market, okay, it's a RTO. And 15 days have passed and suddenly our RTO numbers have shot up more than 50%. And immediately we had to stop all the orders of a similar geography, people who are ordering in a similar pattern, this, that. But essentially, this is what influence can do to you. I will also talk about one positive, example. So, of course, there are the whole beauty parade of Nykaa. And what we did is a very small, humble brand of ours, which is Cocosol Beauty, which is like one of the cleanest beauty and first of its kind, built on the goodness of coconut, which is what essentially a lot of Marico products are about. We launched them on Nykaa with very humble, of course, expenses, etc., because we don't have investors backing us. We have shareholders to answer to, right? So essentially what we did is that we used this express of nano influencers and we gave them a code. And we have actually so these are since nano influencers, these are emerging, so they are happily associated with Marico. And we have just given them products. So if you go on Instagram, every 3 months, there are thousands of such influencers posting a very high lifestyle short video and there is a code which is there. This has really helped to build the brand and get that kind of trust with the niche followers on Cocosol. And within a year, I mean, it's almost 2x of the business what it has. So both sides of story, they can really make or break your brand. So you need to be aware of what they're talking about and essentially, tap into it before it goes viral. So yeah.
Those are what I call stories from the trenches, and retail is always about the details. So some good experiences to hear on what can and what cannot work when you kind of try to go through different routes. But of course, organic growth is what all brands look for, and doing it the right way, it takes some getting used to and learning from experiences and seeing what works and what doesn't. But that's where the role of data comes in to kind of inform the enterprise on what's working. Well, we've gone through a whole lot of themes here. So Kumar, I'm going to bring you in and we're going to look together into the crystal ball. We're seeing retailers today, they're moving more towards personalization, more moderation, value consciousness. So the trends that are going to dominate the retail space over the next decade, your thoughts?
That's quite a bit of crystal gazing. So I'll contextualize my answer. I'll try to stay away from Amit's domain of premium retail, and I'll talk more about Bharat, right? Not so much about India. I think Anuradha captured it really well when she talked about, especially in the premium tier, there's going to be a lot of change in retail. And I do agree with her that there's going to be a lot of entertainment and definitely a lot of cost-focused retailers will need to bring in as the economics changes. But in the Bharat segment, which is more value, I see 3 big trends largely. Whereas in the premium segment, you might see more brands. In the value segment, we'll see fewer brands. I'm already seeing a lot of consolidation. The unit economics have not been kind. The digital unit economics have not been kind to many manufacturers and brands. So I maybe can say about a 30-40% at minimum shrinkage of number of brands / number of manufacturers who exist in the lifestyle business itself, which is clothing and apparel, clothing and footwear. I also see that there's going to be a lot of churn in retail space and markets. By what I mean by that is, I was in Calcutta last week and I could see a lot of shopping complexes that were fairly vibrant earlier have actually got wiped out. There's not a single shop in them anymore. And of course, new retail will come up. And retail is back to above 100%. Gautam, just for your info, I'm kind of talking to a lot of retailers live and all of them are growing. Right. So a new retail will come up, but definitely there'll be a change in markets, malls, roads, of retail quite a bit. I also think there's going to be a change in how retailers buy and maybe how consumers therefore are offered choice. There is going to be a lot more data-driven decision making where there wasn't any, because you're dealing with a lot of unfamiliar brands. So as brands kind of collapse on themselves, retailers who made it, perhaps their interest to have different selections in each store. So each chota dukan would have a different selection of brands, because otherwise you'd be pushed by the consumer to discount. So they specialize in having one more fragmented manufacturer. Once that fragmented manufacturer kind of goes away, you will definitely see a lot more data-led decision making on which brand should I buy. A lot of it will come from peers, not only influencers. In the Bharat system, the consumers might be driven by influencers, but the customers, or typically our customers that run, our retailers, will be driven a lot by the choices we present to them. I think third is going to be the cost economics in this segment are also going to be under tremendous strain. And one of the areas which, something that I've learned along the way, leaner inventory is going to become the norm. So omni-channel in the value segment will have to find a new route, because, the omni-channel Amit and I have experienced is a very expensive omni-channel. Putting big screens and expensive systems in place is not going to be what a 200 square feet retailer, which by the way is about 75% of Indian retail. 200 to 300 square feet of retail. They will have to find new omni-channel models. I'm very confident, at least the ecosystem we've built in Bangalore and the larger country, we will be able to answer that. But I do see this, that there's going to be a tremendous monetization challenge as well, accompanying the inventory challenges. Retailers will try to brand and lease out the space. So today, let's say if a jockey or a Lux Innerwear today gives a name board out for free as a reward, tomorrow they might have to pay for it like the liquor companies do, because the retailers will need to find a way to earn money. That money will come from brands, and therefore they'll need to find a way to earn money. So I think the Bharat ecosystem is going to go through quite a bit of churn over the next few years. But these are not the only trends, but something just comes to mind. I think these 2-3 areas.
Well, that's a frank and honest assessment, and especially the India and Bharat paradigm. I want to dwell more on that as we look to wrap up this conversation and come to Anuradha for the last word. Anuradha, the next wave of growth will encompass customers beyond tier 1 cities and metros, and as Kumar has said, it's going to bring more focus on tier 2 as e-retail paves the way there. So in your view, as we wrap up this conversation, how is technology enabling the growth of e-commerce in Bharat?
I think a very, very pertinent pointer, especially as we look at the next wave of e-commerce shoppers really sitting in tier 2 and beyond in what we are calling as Bharat. I think what's also important, and I'll keep this really short, is to understand that these next set of online shoppers are really comprising of the set of folks who have very recently started to understand what getting onto digital platforms means like. And at the same time, you have this very new, young, aspirational set of consumers who are massively influenced by what Juhi was last touching upon, and Dinkar did as well, which is the creator economy, style icons, user-generated content, really coming from folks who are one step away from celebs, but really, from the walk of life like nano and micro and mega influencers. Now, in terms of tech, I think there are 4 or 5 kinds of tech which are really pushing the pedal as far as Bharat evolution is concerned. One is, of course, what we talked about earlier, that's AI and big data analytics. I think now the sort of consumer inciting and analysis that we are talking about is way beyond demographics. It's a lot to do with underlying psychographics. It's about understanding their need states and also sort of micro segmenting customers even at the level of hundreds, right? So that's number one. The second one that we are talking about is really predictive analytics, and that's where a lot of your marketing engines are becoming far more real-time and sharper in their decision-making, their marketing strategies, both at a personalized level as well as hyper-targeting. The third kind of tech that is actually shaping your Bharat evolution is really your coming together of what I'm calling as voice, video, and vernacular. So this is the set of consumers that are going to be heavily hinged on assisted commerce. And that's where you're seeing the rise of social commerce, community buying, and tech that enables all of these three, the voice, vernacular, and video, to really happen, because you're talking about a very diverse set of consumers there. And then the last leg of tech is really what we see in the form of apps, whether they are last mile delivery apps, they are your order taking apps in your Kirana outlets, which really drive a lot of momentum for tier 2 and beyond. And for that matter, your in-app shopping experiences as well. So really, these would be the 4 areas that will kind of shape tech investments, especially when we talk about a very different set of consumers and rest of Bharat.
All right, on that note, it's time to conclude this discussion, a very wide-ranging conversation on where things stand currently with this retail space and where we are headed. A very frank and honest assessment coming in from Kumar, and very detailed overview on what is going on currently from Juhi and Raj, Amit, Dinkar, and of course, Anuradha. Thank you everyone for joining us and sharing your insights. And of course, thank you to the audience for tuning in as well. Before we sign off, I'd also like to thank Salesforce for partnering with us for today's insightful session. We'll be back soon with yet another talking point, another session. Till then, this is your host, Gautam Srinivasan, signing off. Have a great day.
Thank you, and thank you, Gautam, as well. Cheers.
Thank you, Raj. Thank you.